Guys, how are you all? So this is a part 9 video for this particular topic. We are talking about the historical background of the Indian Constitution for so many days. And here I am Dr. Sashi Prabha who is presenting you this particular topic. Now, moving on to the content of the topic. So, this is the introduction, the index which I have given you in the beginning of this index. We have completed the first chapter, that is the introduction, and the second chapter, the company rule, is also completed. Different acts that are present in the company rule, and then the third chapter, the Crown's rule, is also almost done. We have completed the 3.1 and the 3.2, that is the Government of India Act 1858 and Indian Council Acts. All the three Indian Council Acts, that is 1861, 1892 and 1909 Indian Council Acts, are completed. Now, we in this particular video, we are going to talk about the Government of India Act 1919. Right, moving on. Yeah, so this is the continuation of the content. So let us talk about the 90 Government of India Act 1919. So under the Crown Rule, so all the red ones, that is the 1 to 4, we have completed. So today we are going to discuss about the fifth one, that is the Government of India Act of 1919. So here actually, before going into the topic, I like to say that this act came in when there was a First World War. During the time of First World War, we got this act, and during the running of this act, we got the Home Rule movement also. The Home Rule movement was we got the Home Rule movement in 1921. So during this particular Government of India Act 1919, I'll discuss about this Home Rule movement, everything regarding that in a next video. But for this particular video, let us stick on to the Government of India Act 1919. Let us not deviate from this. Moving on. So this Government of India Act 1919 is also called as Montauk-Chelmsford Reforms. Why we call this as a Montauk-Chelmsford Reform means at that time Montauk was the Secretary of the State and Chelmsford was the Viceroy. You know that in India we used to have a Viceroy. The previous name of Viceroy is Governor General of India. So the Governor General of India has been redesignated as Viceroy. So at that time, Chelmsford was the Viceroy and Montauk was the Secretary of the State. So under these two people's name, we got this Montauk-Chelmsford reforms for this Government of India Act 1919. Actually, these are the two people who gave these reforms for us. So that's the reason we call this as Montauk-Chelmsford reforms. So here, the question that raises here is how we got this 1919 Government of India Act. There was a small story behind this. That was the reason why the question raised how we got this Government of India Act 1919. The answer for this is this Government of India Act was arised because of the result of the British Declaration. Because of the British Declaration, we got this Government of India Act 1919. So, what is this British Declaration? When we got this declaration? So, let us see the story behind this. So, here on August 20th, 1917, the British government in London, they made a declaration. They made a declaration that the first point in the declaration is the association of the Indians has to increase for a smooth and a proper running of the administration in India. What is the first point? The British government, they have declared that the association of Indians has to be increased. What for? So that the smooth running of the administration in India will be continued. And the second point in the declaration is they want to develop the self-governance ability. I'll explain you what is the self-governance everything in this particular video. So this was the declaration made by the British government on August 20th, 1970. So, in order to fulfill this declaration, the Montauk Chelmsford, who were the viceroy and the secretary of the state at that time, were nominated, and they asked these two people to give a report how to fulfill these declarations. So in order to do so, the Montag and the Chelmsford, they gave some of the points basing on which we can fulfill this declaration. So those points are nothing but our Government of India Act 1919. So Government of India Act 1919 was directly written by the Montag and the Chelmsford to fulfill the declaration of British in 1970. So this is the story behind this. Now let us move into this. What are the points that were given by Montag and the Chelmsford, and what are the points, means what are the characteristic features of this Government of India Act 1919. So under this, just excuse me here, the heading characteristics of Government of India Act 1919. It is not 91. So please make a correction. Sorry for that correction. Whatever. So the first characteristic of Government of India Act 1919. Right. So let us see what is the first one. This Government of India Act 1919, it separated or demarcated the central and the provinces, provincial subjects. So here, let us tell you what is this provinces. Even for today in India, we are having the central government and the provincial government. Right? What is the provincial government? State government. So in India, we have the provincial and the central government, that is central and the state government. So now we call it as a state government, but at that time we call it as a provincial. So wherever you get the word provincial, it is nothing but state. Please remember that. So just like present day, at that time also, the British government has separated the central government and the provincial government. Right? So, next point is the Government of India Act 1919 has introduced a diarchy. This diarchy is also called as dual government. But here the point that you have to remember is the diarchy was introduced at the provincial level but not at the central level. This is very important point that you have to remember. The diarchy was introduced, but where? It was introduced at the provincial level but not at the central level. And through this act, the control of the central government was relaxed. Okay, the central government will have some control on the provincial government, but by demarcating the central and the provincial government, the central government control over the provincial government has been relaxed. So the self-government has been started from this state. The self-government means the provinces or the states, they will have the control in their hands to some extent. So the declaration has given, the British declaration in 1917 has given that the self-governance has to be improved. So in order to improve the self-governance, this will help them. Okay. Now moving on. So here, one more point, the central and the provincial legislators were authorized to make laws on the respective list of subjects. So both the central government and the provincial government will have their own respective authorizations to make the laws. They can make their own laws of the respective subjects. Okay. So the structure of government continued to be centralized and unitary. Even though the provincial subjects have been demarcated, the the provincial has been given the relaxation from the center's authority, but still the structure of the government continued to be centralized and unitary. Got it? Moving on. to the second characteristic of this particular act. The diarchy was introduced at the provinces but not at the center. This point we have discussed. So continuation to this, the provincial subjects were further divided into two. So I said the diarchy was introduced at the provinces. So at the provinces we have two subjects. So what are the two subjects? The transfer subjects and the reserve subjects. So the two subjects, the diarchy or the dual government was introduced at the provinces, means the transfer subjects and the reserve subjects. Moving on, what is this transfer subjects? Transfer subjects are those subjects that are administered by the governor. So they are administered, the transfer subjects are looked after by the governor or controlled by the governor. So here make a difference between the governor and the Governor General of India. The governor is at the provinces level. Governor General of India means at the central level, who is called as Viceroy. So Governor and the Governor General of India are not one and the same. So don't please don't get confused in that. Okay. So transfer subjects will be looked after by governor. This is the first point. And governor will take the help of the ministers. So with the aid of the ministers, the governor will look after the transfer subjects. And these transfer subjects are responsible to the legislative council. You know what is legislative council, right? We have discussed about this in our previous videos many times. So the transfer subjects are to be answered in the legislative council. And the elected members of the legislative council was increased to 70%. Okay, the elected members of legislative council was increased. Transfer subjects are responsible to the legislative council, means they will be discussed in the legislative council, and this transfer subjects will be looked after by the governor with the help of the ministers. Got it? Moving on, if you see what is this reserve subjects were also to be administered by the governor, but with his executive council. Just remember, transfer subjects, they are responsible to the legislative council, not to the executive council. And reserve subjects is opposite to that. They are responsible to the executive council but not to the legislative council. Both will be administered by the governor of that particular provinces only. Okay. So legislative council is not responsible for the reserve subjects. So please don't get confused. I repeat this once again. Transfer subjects means they are responsible for the legislative council. Reserve subjects, they are responsible for the executive council. Got it. So here one more thing you have to observe here. The concept of self-government has started during this act only. But this concept of self-government is just a partial self-government. Why I am saying it as a partial self-government means only for some of the subjects they are supposed to answer in the legislative council, not for all. Okay, so for some of, so it is partial. Only for some subjects they are answering for the legislative council, but remaining subjects they are answering in the executive council. So partial self-governance has started. Whatever the self-governance has been started here. Moving on to the next third characteristic feature of this Government of India Act is revenue. It's very important. The revenue sources were also being divided into two categories. Means the revenue is also divided into two categories. What are the two categories here? The first one is the central budget and the second one is the provincial budget. So even today we have the central government taxes and the state government's taxes, right? So just so that the provinces could run the administration with the aid of the revenue raised by the provinces themselves. So just like today, Today we are having the central government taxes and the state government taxes, but at that time we call it as central budget and the provincial budget. Why this separation? Why the revenue sources has been separated? Means the provinces can run their own requirements with their budget. They can look after their own requirements with their budget. So that's the reason why the provincial budget was separated from the central budget. No need of asking the central government permission for each and every development that is required in the provinces. They can fulfill their own requirements with the budget that they are having. Okay, this is a part of the self governance. Okay, so that's the same thing I have explained here. The provinces could run the administration with the aid of the revenue raised by the provinces by themselves. Got it? Here, by doing so, the provinces will have some power to run their government with their own budget. Okay, next point. The fourth characteristic feature here, the election system was introduced. One more important, many times this question was asked in the examination. So when does the word election was introduced? The word election was introduced during the Government of India Act 1919. If you remember, when we are talking about the previous Indian Council Act in 1909, there I said the system of election was introduced. But the word election was not introduced during that time. Instead of election, they used to use the word nominated. But here we got the word election. So the concept, the real original concept of election was introduced during the Government of India Act 1919. Moving on to the next feature of this Government of India Act 1919. So through this Government of India Act 1919, bicameralism was introduced. So what is this bicameralism? Two houses, upper house and the lower house was introduced. Where this was introduced at the level of center, not at the level of state. I'm talking. Okay, so even for today, the present day, we are having two houses. We are having bicameralism. Okay, what are the two houses? At that time, we call it as upper house and the lower house. Okay, the upper house is called as Council of State. The lower house is called as Legislative Assembly. But today, also we are having this upper house and the lower house. The upper house is called as Rajya Sabha and the lower house is called as Lok Sabha. Okay, so this lower house at that time is called as Legislative Assembly, but that now we call it as Lok Sabha. Okay, moving on to the next point, important point here. At that time, the majority of the members from both the houses are elected directly. Means both for the upper house and for the lower house, the members, most of the members are elected directly through elections. This is different from the present day. Present day, the Lok Sabha members were elected. Majority of the Lok Sabha members were elected. Okay. But the Rajya Sabha members were nominated. They are not elected. You guys know this very well. But at that time, both upper house and the lower house members were elected directly. So this is the difference between the present day and that of the olden days. Now, let us know more points about this upper house. So here, as I said, the upper house is also called as Council of State, and the number of members in the upper house are 60 members. Out of 60 members, 24 members were elected. So in the previous slide, I have shown you that majority of the members of both upper and the lower house are elected. So here, out of 60 members, 34 members were elected directly. Now moving on to the lower house. The lower house was also called as Legislative Assembly, and the total number of members in this lower house are 144 members, and out of 144 members, 104 members were elected. 104 members were elected directly. Exactly. Okay. The present day, the Lok Sabha is called, so present day lower house is called Lok Sabha at the center level. But remember, legislative assembly is the word that we are using at the state level, not at the center level. So don't get confused here. Okay. Now, moving on. The next point is the power of both upper and lower houses are equal. Both upper house and the lower houses will have the equal powers, except except here the power to vote for a budget. The power to vote for budget, also called as vote supply, was given to the lower house but not to the upper house. Okay, even now also, the present day also, we have the same thing. The vote on budget responsibility is given to the Lok Sabha but not to the Rajya Sabha. Okay, today, the present day, you all know that the budget will be discussed in the Lok Sabha but not in the Rajya Sabha. Okay, so the present day, the voting on budget, vote for budget is given, the responsibility is given to the Lok Sabha but not to the Rajya Sabha. Even at that time also the same thing, the vote on budget or vote of supply is for the lower house but not for the upper house. Other than that, almost all the powers for the upper house and the lower house are almost equal. Moving on to the next important characteristic feature of this, communal representation. You know what is this meaning of communal representation, right? So this act of 1919 extended the communal representation for six Indian Christians, Europeans and Anglo-Indians. Let me explain you this. When we are talking about the Indian Council Act of 1909, we have discussed about the communal representation. So the communal representation was introduced for the Muslim community, right? It means that only the Muslims will contest in the elections and only that community, means Muslim members will only uh, have the eligibility to vote, have the eligibility to elect their representative. That is called as communal representation. So the British government has started this process of communal representation. Just the Britishers want to divide and rule our country. So that's the reason why they started the communal representation in 1909 through the government, through the Muslim community, that is the Muslim community representation. So here in 1919, they extended. In 1909, they started for Muslim community. In 1919, they extended this for other communities like Sikhs, Indian Christians, Europeans, and Anglo Indians. Guys, let me tell you one thing in the examination, don't get confused. If you get a question like when do the communal representation was started, the communal representation was started in 1909. It is not 1919, 1909, 1909. Okay, that was extended in 1919. Of course, later on this has not been followed. That's a different point here, right? So what it mean here? The six will have the nominate in the election, and only the six will give the vote. Similarly, the Indian Christians, means only the Indian Christians will give their vote. That is the communal representation. Okay. Next, moving on to the next important feature, the seventh one is the High Commission Office. So this Government of India Act, it has created a new office in London that is called as High Commission Office, where High Commissioner will be there. So here, some of the duties of the Secretary of the State were transferred to the High Commission Office. Listen carefully. The Secretary of the State will stay in India. He look after everything in India. He will pass the information to the British Parliament. He is a direct representative of the British Parliament. That point we know, we have already discussed in the previous videos. Now, who is this High Commissioner or High Commission Office? Means some of the duties of the Secretary of the State will be transferred to the High Commissioner. who stay in the London. Okay, so a new office has been created that is called as High Commission Office. Next, one more important characteristic feature is Public Commission Service Commission. Here, this particular act, it established the Central Public Service Commission in 1926 for recruiting the civil servants. Okay, now also you are having the Public Service Commission in India, Union Public Service Commission we call it as. Through this Union Public Service Commission only, many of the government jobs will be recruited like your civils. Okay, CSAT, all that will be recruited through this Union Public Service Commission only. At that time also we are having this Public Service Commission. The only difference is now we call it as Union Public Service Commission, but at that time we call it as Federal Public Service Commission. Make a difference. Federal Public Service Commission was the word that was used at that time, but now we call it as Union Public Service Commission. Right. So, this Public Service Commission was established in 1962. Here I have to give a small information. So, you guys have read that during the 1853 Act, okay, Regulating Act, we got the civil services. Okay, we got the civil services during the 1853 Act. Okay, the Indians were also allowed to write the civil services through the committee called as Maculus Committee. We have discussed this point in that particular video, that the Maculus Committee has been introduced, and this Maculus Committee is responsible for the uh, allowing the Indians to join into the Public Service Commission exam. At that time we don't have any office in India. If the Indians are if we, the Indians want to write the public service examination, they have to move to London, and those who have money, those who are eligible, they move to London. They used to write exam over there. If they are qualified, they will do their service in India. Okay, everyone cannot afford it, so they want to change this. In order to change this, they have started a Public Service Commission. They want to give chance for everyone, so they started in India. That was in 1926. Right, so that is what I mean to say. Now, coming to the next important feature is franchises. It granted franchises to a limited number of people. Now, let me tell you what is this franchises. Franchises is nothing but right to vote in public elections. Simply saying, now we are calling it as right to vote. At that time, they used to call it as franchises. So, this right to vote in public elections is not there for everyone. Now, those who have completed 18 years, they are eligible to right to vote at present day. But at that time, everyone are not eligible to have to vote in elections. Very few people are allowed. So this franchises have started. On what basis they have started means basing upon the property, basing upon the taxes that they are paying, basing upon the education qualification that they are having. Means very few people who are rich, who pay a lot of tax, who are well educated, they will only have the right to vote. Everyone will not have this right to vote at that time. So these are the important features of the Government of India Act 1919. This Government of India Act 1919 has led to a movement called as Swaraj movement, which we will discuss in the next video. Okay, so the important characteristic features of Government of India Act 1919 is these are all the list of characteristic features. In the next video, we will discuss about the Simon Commission, which was led because of the Swaraj movement. So that's all for today's video, guys. So If you like the video, please put that in the comment box. If you have any suggestions to give, that also please mention in the comment box so that it will help me to improve my quality of video. And follow me on the subscribe me for my upcoming sessions, upcoming videos where I will complete the whole polity for your civils or whatever the competitive exams you are going for. That's all, guys. Thank you. Take care. Bye bye.